on Talking Points. The leader of Catalonia is facing resistance from the central government in Madrid for the region's push for independence. Some protesters took to the streets this weekend to oppose Catalonia's independence.
Are all together today to ask a change and they stop and talk together to find a way to live together in peace.
Following the Las Vegas shooting, party members on both sides of the aisle are calling for a ban on bump stocks. We'll discuss how that fits into the overall debate on gun control.
Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says he's encouraged by some of the political progress on this issue in the wake of the shooting.
I think you have to walk before you run, and I do think this is an important moment. This is the first time that the gun lobby has shown willingness to come to the table.
Last week, the Supreme Court heard arguments for a case on gerrymandering in Wisconsin. Democrats say the redrawing of districts there is threatening their ability to get votes.
And the Iran deal appears in jeopardy. President Trump is expected to decertify it soon. What does that mean for international diplomacy? We'll break it down later in the show.
All that and more ahead. This is Talking Points.
Our top story tonight, Spain's internal struggle over Catalan independence following a pro-unity rally in Barcelona over the weekend. Some now doubt that the Catalan president will unilaterally declare the region independent this week. I'm Josh Carney.
And I'm Mike Riccardi. Ahead of tomorrow's parliamentary speech by the Catalan president, the Spanish government says it will be quick to act if Catalonia declares independence. One spokesman from the central government warned the president that he could be arrested should he move forward with a secession. Some believe there are three potential outcomes for tomorrow's speech, one being a true secession declaration, another being a symbolic one, or no declaration at all.
In Europe, many are voicing concern about the potential move to secede. The French government said today it will not recognize Catalonia as an independent state. It also says that if Catalonia secedes, it will not be part of the European Union. Even still, those who took to the polls last week for a referendum on Catalonian independence voted yes to secede, and they'll be sure to continue to push for independence. Take a listen to some of the pro-unity rally in Barcelona over the weekend, where between 250,000 to 400,000 Catalans came out in support of unity instead of independence.
¡Viva Catalunya! ¡Viva la Constitución! ¡Y visca el rey! ¡Yo soy español, español, español! ¡Yo soy español, español, español! ¡No nos engañan, Cataluña es España!
Joining us now is Talking Points contributor Galat Melamed. We're going to further the discussion here.
Yeah.
Now, Galat, what can we learn from this weekend's events?
I think we saw over the weekend that there is this real silent majority. Even though the referendum last week, there was a 90% yes vote for independence, 43% of the Catalonian population did not vote, and a lot of those people were out rallying over the weekend as a last-ditch effort, saying we still want to remain a part of Spain.
Now, even though this unity rally happened, is Catalan actually on the brink of independence?
You know, the Catalan president, he's scheduled to present at the Catalonian parliament tomorrow, and it's very likely that he will declare independence. He was actually scheduled to speak today, but the Spain Constitutional Court canceled that, and if he does declare independence, it doesn't necessarily mean the Spanish government is on board with that. The Spanish Prime Minister said he will do everything he constitutionally can to prevent the independence and maybe intervene by invoking Article 155 of the Constitution, basically saying if you're autonomous, we're still going to intervene with you and you really aren't independent after all.
And if Catalonia does gain independence, I mean, what's the future look like for them? Because, you know, they would be a very small country. I mean, what does their economy look like?
Well, right now, their economy in Spain is great. The problem is a lot of businesses are currently leaving because of this political turmoil. There's going to be a political turmoil. You saw a large part of the population doesn't necessarily want to be independent from Spain. And if you look at a map, actually the way they're placed in Spain is really interesting because they're on a port, so they can export through the sea without Spain. Spain's economy will get hurt from that because they have their biggest port in Barcelona, and there's 20% of the GDP right there. Also, they have that land border with France, so Spain will lose a lot of a land border with France, which is interesting and will hurt Spain potentially, and is good, I guess, if there's a Catalonian independent nation because they have their own land border with France.
Now, going beyond just the region, and obviously from that map we can tell it borders other nations.
Yeah.
Now, Europe, how would they respond to this if they were to declare independence?
Yeah, well, like you were speaking about earlier, France isn't going to recognize them as a nation. The EU won't recognize them as a nation, and that definitely is going to make it hard for them to be as strong as they are now. They're strong because they're a part of Spain, and they're strong in Spain. Alone, not so certain, but as for the rest of Europe, it's going to show that kind of a boost in populism that you're seeing in France and Germany and the UK. It's going to support these populism ideals, and potentially maybe if this does work out for the Catalonian region 5-10 years down the line, you might see places like Scotland try to secede again from the UK, which didn't work out the last time a couple of years ago.
Well, we'll be certainly watching to see who wins this fight for independence. Galat, thanks for being
Thanks
here.
for having me.
After the break, we'll cover the Supreme Court case on gerrymandering and delve into the implications of bump stocks on the gun control debate. Stay with us.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it?
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got? Or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Last week, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for the Gill v. Whitford case. The case was brought forward by Democrats in Wisconsin. The plaintiff is arguing that gerrymandering across Wisconsin is unconstitutional because it weakens Democratic votes statewide. Talking Points contributor Shruti Marathe is here to break it down. Shruti, thanks so much for being here.
Of course, my pleasure.
How did this case make its way to the nation's highest court?
So yeah, it all started in 2010 when the census came out. Afterwards, the legislators redrew district lines to basically define what each congressional district would be. After the 2012 election, Republicans won 60 out of 99 votes by seats in the House with less than 50% of the vote. So obviously Democrats are bringing it forward now, saying that their voice is not being heard in Congress and saying that it's a constitutional issue.
Now, going into this case, what are the major contentions in these oral arguments from both sides?
Yeah, so the plaintiffs and the liberal opinion of the court is basically that it's a First Amendment issue, not a 14th Amendment issue, which is really interesting because most gerrymandering cases have said it's a 14th Amendment equal protection issue. In this case, the plaintiff is arguing First Amendment, we're being discriminated against because of our political view. Conservatives are arguing that it's not the court's issue to intervene in this case, and most conservative justices are saying that Congress should really handle gerrymandering issues, not the court.
And speaking of conservatives, we do have some audio from oral arguments from Justice Neil Gorsuch questioning judicial authority. Let's take a listen.
Congress acting in this area. Other than the fact that politicians are never going to fix gerrymandering, they like gerrymandering. The problem in this area is if you don't do it, it's locked up. The voters of Wisconsin can't get it on the ballot without the legislature's consent.
And yeah, that's really the main issue. Like, the plaintiff and a lot of Democrats are arguing, like, if we don't have the Supreme Court or a court really take a stand on this issue, Congress has really no incentive to change the ballot not in their favor and get themselves voted out of office.
And now, this being the first docket with newly appointed Justice Neil Gorsuch. How do you think SCOTUS comes down on this? What do you think their ruling is?
I mean, you can really see a 4-4 split. The one justice that it's going to come down to is Kennedy. And that's where it makes a really big deal that the plaintiff is making a First Amendment argument, because we've seen Kennedy get really passionate about the First Amendment, both voting for Citizens United, but also voting in protection of flag burning. So it really comes down to how he votes.
When we see how fundamental this vote is actually going to be and the significance going beyond that, it's not only going to affect Wisconsin, it's going to affect states throughout the country.
Yeah.
So how does that significance play into the ultimate role of this here?
I mean, it answers the question on if we're going to have competitive legislative elections going forward. Like, who is your congressman back home?
Joe Kennedy III.
And what party does he represent?
The Democrats.
And how long have the Democrats held that seat?
Since Barney Frank.
Exactly.
I mean, look here in Onondaga County, right? You have John Katko. This is the first time in decades that somebody's actually repeated and stayed in office.
And it's never even a question. Even back in my 12th representative district in New Jersey, we always know that a Democrat is going to win. And especially in this day and age where voters feel like their voice isn't being heard and don't trust their government, it's important for the Supreme Court to make a decision to show that each vote will matter regardless of gerrymandering.
Well, this is the first big case in this new docket. There's certainly going to be plenty more to watch. Shruti, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
After the massacre in Las Vegas last week, Democrats are calling for action on gun control. And this time, some Republicans are open to one piece of legislation. Talking Points contributor Byron Tollefson has more.
Republicans have fought against gun legislation for decades. After the Newtown shooting in 2012, the GOP halted expanding background checks. Just last year, they blocked a bill that would have stopped gun sales to people on watch lists. But the Las Vegas massacre last week may change things. Republicans say they're open to a ban on bump stocks, which the shooter used to increase his weapon's rate of fire. Now, a semi-automatic gun makes a shooter pull the trigger constantly, but with bump stocks, the gun does that automatically. This essentially turns regular rifles into automatic weapons, which have been banned in the U.S. since 1934. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan says he's open to a ban, but the National Rifle Association is a key factor here. The organization poured over $50 million into the 2016 election, and its leader Wayne LaPierre said yesterday he's against an outright ban on bump stocks. A Republican congressman from Florida, Carlos Curbelo, is drafting the bill, and he talked about why it's important yesterday.
For decades, compromise between Republicans and Democrats on this issue has been elusive. We have gotten absolutely nothing. This might be a small, but I think a very important step towards moving to a more rational conversation about sensible gun policy in this country.
We're now joined by Byron and Talking Points contributor Gabrielle Caracciolo to continue the conversation on gun control. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Now, we've heard Republicans and the NRA and Democrats all open to banning bump stocks. Is there anything more that's looking like they might be getting done in the legislative agenda?
Well, what we're looking at right now is, like you said, a lot of Republicans are saying they're open to some sort of gun control legislation. We'll have some back and forth between the House and the Senate to see what actually would go into one of these bills. One major player is House Majority Whip Steve Scalise has said that he's not open, and he thinks that the current gun control laws need to be more strictly enforced before we start looking at new laws. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays a role in the House's voting.
Yeah, it's a very particular piece of legislation. The bump stocks, it's something somewhat minute, but it has a chance of getting passed. Now, like I said, the National Rifle Association is a big player in this situation because they've already come out and said, we're not going to fully get rid of this, but we might regulate it. So I think it has much more chance of getting passed than something like an assault weapons ban or background checks.
Now, if the legislative agenda does go through and something were to pass, it would inevitably face legal challenges that would be going all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, would some sort of regulation in this sense hold up in a legally challenged way?
I don't think it would be able to hold up in the Supreme Court. The Second Amendment is open to such broad interpretations that with the current Supreme Court, Kennedy might be a swing in some other cases, but when it comes to the Second Amendment, I don't think he's going left.
Yeah, Neil Gorsuch now being part of the Supreme Court is huge, especially in the situation, because you can have the Supreme Court saying, look, it's a violation of Second Amendment, then you shut it down, even after all that potential legislative work. So I think that if Kennedy swings with the conservatives there, this probably won't stay if anything gets passed.
And Byron, like you said, I mean, it's not likely that like major gun legislation like a ban on assault weapons would get through Congress. But my question is, what is the Republican solution? Because it seems that Republicans are, you know, they're pushing back against gun control, but I'm not seeing a real solution as to how you deal with these mass shootings. I mean, I saw Bill O'Reilly wrote in his blog saying that these mass shootings are the price of freedom. I mean, is that what we accept as a country, or are there other solutions out there besides just gun control?
Well, different Republicans are saying different things. Some people are saying you need to look at things like poverty, mental illness, and overall crime rates in order to improve gun control and effectively save lives.
Yeah, a lot of the Republican view is that the way to fix this is to get more guns. We saw with the Newtown shooting in 2012, a lot of the NRA's solution was to arm teachers. And I think we're a long ways away from getting legitimate gun control legislation. However, this bump stocks thing is an encouraging step. We'll just see if the Congress stays Republican tilted in 2018, and maybe some legislation will get passed after that.
All right, Byron and Gabrielle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
When we get back, we'll discuss the Iran nuclear deal. President Trump plans to decertify the agreement, but what does that mean? Don't go away. We'll have all the answers after the break.
What are you, superheroes?
Just four brothers who hate bullies and love this city. Gear up, guys.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. Gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Go, okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. So wet.
This week, President Trump is expected to announce that he will decertify the Iran nuclear deal. This means that Trump gives Congress the ability to decide whether or not to pull out of the deal. Trump has repeatedly said that the deal is not in the best interests of the U.S. and that Iran is not complying with what he calls the spirit of the deal. Talking Points contributors Dan Prager and Elijah Shama say his announcement could have huge effects for international politics. They're here to break it down. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Elijah, first, why does he want to decertify this deal?
Well, he wants to decertify this deal because he doesn't think it's working. He thinks Iran is kind of skirting past a lot of these sanctions, and they're kind of getting off the leash, so to speak. And a lot of the kind of argument against this deal says that it's been flawed from the beginning and it's fixed beyond repair, so we might as well just scrap it. It's going to end anyway. Let's just do it and get it over with.
Although he did have the option to just scrap it and get it over with. An interesting distinction is the difference between getting rid of it and decertifying it. Decertifying it just throws it down to Congress, which is actually a pretty shrewd political move. It gives Trump the ability to say, I'm doing what I promised, I'm getting rid of the Iran deal, so his supporters will still follow and believe that. But it also gives him some slack among EU leaders and international leaders who are criticizing him for trying to pull out of this deal, saying, hey, it's not on me, it's on Congress.
Well, how do you think it plays out in Congress?
Well, it remains to be seen. I think Trump is going to say, it was reported that he's going to say that they should not scrap the deal just yet. They shouldn't impose new sanctions. And I think that will probably stay for a while. I think Congress will go.
I think it's interesting because when you look at kind of the split, the vote before, you had senators who were in favor of kind of not voting for the Iran deal, like Chuck Schumer, who have flipped because a lot of kind of lobbying organizations have flipped on how they support. For example, the Jewish lobbying from AIPAC now likes the Iran deal. They think that back in the day, they thought it was going to be kind of an existential threat to Israel, and now they're seeing that it really has kind of curbed Iranian aggression in the region, and they would like to see that continued. So I think you're going to see a lot of Democrats, especially, who were maybe on the fence about the Iran deal, more on the side of it now, and that might complicate
When
things.
we move beyond the domestic perspective, though, and we get into the international realm of this, especially the interests that lie, how is the international community ultimately reacting towards this?
The international community is not a fan of President Trump in general, for the most part, and they're not a fan of what he's doing with this deal, especially the EU countries that are part of the deal, England and France. They are really angry at the U.S. for trying to back out of a deal that was an international deal, not just a deal made with the U.S. and Iran. And that could be really big. And it's something that Iran really wants. You see them when they're doing these missile tests. They're pushing the U.S. They're trying to make the U.S. back out of this deal. It's kind of one of their goals. They want the U.S. to kind of look like a bad guy. And it puts President Trump in a tough situation, because do you stay strong and do you say we're backing out of this deal because you're messing with us and you're trying to provoke us? Or do you do what might necessarily be the better thing for an international perspective and stick with the deal and say to Iran, all right, we're going to let you kind of walk all over.
At the same time, you can say that they're kind of messing with it, they're pushing the limits and so on and so forth, but Iran is subject to the most stringent nuclear testing in about 25 years, and all international agencies say they have been complying. Maybe they're getting close to the line, but no one's ever been faulted for getting close to the line. It's when you cross that line.
And they're doing everything they really can to stay on the legal letter of the law side, but they're pushing it as far as they can. They go a little further each time just to see how the U.S. will react. They're testing Trump.
That push and that line is certainly something that we'll be keeping an eye on. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stick around for some stories you missed last week. We'll run through them after the break. Stay with us.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Some stories inevitably do not capture the mainstream attention they deserve. This week on Talking Points, we have riots in Russia and the potential loss of children's health care across the United States. Nearly 300 protesters were arrested in nationwide protests in Russia on Saturday. The protests were spread across major cities such as Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Sochi. Thousands of people turned out in support of activist Alexei Navalny, who is serving a 20-day jail term for organizing an unauthorized public meeting. Navalny plans to run for president in the next general elections, which take place in March 2018. Saturday's protests were made on President Vladimir Putin's 68th birthday.
This is not the first time Navalny, his supporters, and the Kremlin have clashed. In 2012, he organized an anti-Putin rally shortly after the leader was elected. In response, he was arrested on charges of embezzlement, which his supporters claim was due to his political views. Navalny has also ran for mayor of Moscow in 2013, but lost in an election that he claimed was rigged against him. Navalny's candidacy for the Russian presidency is also in jeopardy. He is currently serving a 5-year suspended sentence for breaking house arrest, and the conviction could affect his candidacy. A health insurance program that covers over 9 million children has expired in Congress. The Children's Health Insurance Program, known as CHIP, was passed in 1997 under President Bill Clinton. The bill was designed to provide low-cost health insurance for children whose parents did not qualify for Medicare. CHIP was successful in lowering the percentage of uninsured children from 14% in 1997 to under 5% in 2015. CHIP required congressional approval to be renewed, but evidently has fallen to the wayside. Congress has had 2 years to renew federal funding for CHIP, but failed to do so in September.
States match federal funds for the program, so people insured under CHIP will have insurance for the time being. However, a federal panel estimates that 27 states will run out of funds by March of 2018, including the state of New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo said in a statement last week that over 300,000 children are at risk of losing their insurance in New York. Congress is currently looking for a bipartisan solution. Both the House Energy and Commerce Committee and the Senate Finance Committee have passed CHIP reauthorization measures, but neither have been approved. State legislators are preparing for the worst. When their funds run out, states will be forced to cancel payment of CHIP. We'll be sure to provide you with updates as Congress attempts bipartisan reauthorization of the program.
We'll be right back with stories you can look forward to seeing in the weeks ahead. Don't go away.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Last Thursday, President Trump was having dinner with military officials, referring to the gathering as the calm before the storm. When asked what the storm was, President Trump responded, "You'll find out." These comments came just days after the president tweeted, "I told Rex Tillerson, our wonderful Secretary of State, that he is wasting his time trying to negotiate with Little Rocket Man," of course referring to Kim Jong-un. President Trump followed up with saying, "Save your energy, Rex. We'll do what has to be done." After President Trump seemingly undermined the efforts of Tillerson on North Korea, many were wondering what his prerogative was. Now that President Trump has warned of a possible storm, some fear that he is driving us down a road to military engagement. This could be an elaborate plan to get North Korea to the table, or it could be a grab for attention. Maybe the president is serious about military action against North Korea. You'll have to wait to find out.
The GOP has attempted to change some things during the past few months of the Trump administration. They started with health care, perhaps the most politically contentious issue between the party and its opposition. But not only did they lose their chance to change the Affordable Health Care Act, they lost a tremendous amount of political capital moving forward. With immigration spats and speculation of legislation along the way, the second act of the administration's legislative prowess will be tested by the GOP's tax bill and the push for tax reform. The framework for the bill presents lofty goals for a legislative process. The margin for error is so narrow on this legislation, not only because of the hundreds of competing interests, but because the party as a whole has run the count full when it comes to clout. If tax reform is the next swing and miss for conservatives, their political capital will be obliterated until the 2018 midterm elections. I will be looking ahead to how the party begins the process of putting this bill together and just how fast their margin narrows on tax reform. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney.